When he was performing the rites to mark the end of the lustrum in Campus Maritus with a great crowd of the people in attendance, an eagle flew around him a number of times, then went over to a nearby temple where it landed on the first letter of the word Agrippa. Noticing this, he instructed his colleague Tiberius to pronounce the vows which it is customary to undertake for the next lustrum. For himself, although the tablets were written out and ready, was not willing to embark upon that he would not bring to a conclusion. At around the same time, the first letter of this name was struck from the inscription on his statue by a bolt of lightning. This was understood to mean that he would only live for further 100 days, for that the significance of the letter C means 100 in Latin, and that it would come to pass that he would be included among the gods, for Caeser, the remaining part of the name Caesar, means God in the language of the Etruscans. When he defeated Mark Antony at the Battle of Alexandria, he discovered a great obelisk in the city of Heliopolis. This obelisk is today the obelisk in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. It is said to be the same location where St. Peter was crucified on. The Deification of Julius Caesar by Ovid in the Metamorphoses. Though Asclepius came as a stranger to our temples, Caesar is God in his own city, outstanding in war or peace. It was not so much his wars that ended in great victories, or his actions at home, or his swiftly won fame that set him among the stars, a fiery comet as his descendant. There is no greater achievement among Caesar's action that he stood father to our emperor, to have earned many triumphs and celebrated few, than to have sponsored such a man, with whom, as ruler of all, you gods have richly favored the human race. Therefore, in order the emperor not to have been born of mortal seed, Caesar needed to be made a god. When firebrands were seen, burning in the midst of the stars, often drops of blood rained from the clouds, Lucifer, the morning star, was dulled, with rust-black spots on his disk, and the moon's chariot was spattered with blood. The descendant of yours you suffer over, Caeser, has fulfilled his time, and the years he owes to the earth are done. You and Augustus, the son, will ensure that he ascends to heaven as a god and is worshipped in the temples. Augustus, as heir to his name, will carry the burden placed upon him alone, and will have us with him in battle as the most courageous avenger of his father's murder. Under his command, the conquered walls of besieged Mutina will sue for peace. Pharsalia will know him. Macedonian Philippi twice flow with blood, and the one who holds Pompey's great name will be defeated in Sicilian waters. He had barely finished when gentle Venus stood in the midst of the Senate, seen by no one, and took up the new freed spirit of her Caesar from his body, and preventing it from vanishing into the air, carried it towards the glorious stars. As she carried it, she felt it glow and take fire, and loosed it from her breast. It climbed higher than the moon, and drawing behind it a fiery tail shone as a star. Seeing his son's good works, Caesar acknowledges they are greater than his own, and delights in being surpassed by him. Though the son forbids his own actions being honored above the father's, nevertheless tame, free and obedient to no one's orders, exalts him, despite himself, and denies him in this one thing. So great Arterius cedes the title to Agamemnon, and Theseus outdoes Aegis and Achilles, his father Peleus, and lastly, to quote an example worthy of these two, so Saturn is less than Jove. It is said that when his best friend, who was born in the same year as him, Marcus Agrippa, died, owls kept flitting about the city, and lightning struck the house of the Alban Mount, where the consuls lodged during the sacred rites. The star called the comet, Venus, which was the same star that came when Caesar was killed, hung for several days over the city, and was finally dissolved into flashes resembling torches. Many buildings in the city were destroyed by fire, among them the hut of Romulus, which was set ablaze by crows which dipped upon the burning meat from some altar. According to Nicholas of Damascus, the Jewish historian, both Mark Antony and Crassus went into the Parthian Empire and failed. Crassus was killed, but Mark Antony lost his standards and retreated back to Rome. The king of the Parthians in the time of Augustus in 20 BC was Phraates. He had become anxious that Augustus might lead an expedition against him. He was tipped off that Augustus wanted to fulfill the will of his father, which was go as far as Alexander the Great and beyond. Phraates, in fear, returned all the standards and prisoners of war to Augustus and told him that he was bending to his will, making Augustus more powerful than the Parthian Empire. Augustus received the standards and the prisoners as though he had defeated the Parthians in a campaign. He took great pride in the settlement and declared that he had won back without striking a blow what had earlier been lost in battle. Indeed, he gave orders that sacrifices should be voted in honor of his success, and that a temple for Mars Ultor, in which the standards were to be dedicated, should be built on the Capitol, in imitation of that of Jupiter Freterus. And he himself carried out both decrees. Besides this, he rode into the Capitol on horseback and was honored with a triumphal arch. All of these things were done later to commemorate the event. The Parthians and the Arabians and the Africans all were paying tribute at this time, but he could not have the title of king of the world unless the Indians bowed to him. The thoughts were on the table. Should Rome expand its borders and go beyond India? Many delegations visited him, and the people of India were now seeking a treaty of friendship. They sent 7 delegators to come down there. 3 of them arrived. 3 men of the caste of the Rishis, who Nicholas of Damascus calls 3 wise men, presented Augustus with oils and presents and tigers. One of the 3 Indians, named Zarmaris, wished for some reason to end his life. Zarmaris asked Augustus if he could be initiated with him into the mysteries of Eleusis. Augustus agreed, but since it was the winter time, the Eleusinian rites were closed. But on the request of the Emperor Augustus, they had a specially open day just for this occasion. Augustus and Zarmaris were both initiated into the rites together. When he was initiated into the mysteries, the man Zarmaris threw himself into a fire and ended his own life. Many odes and epodes were dedicated to Augustus by Virgil, Ovid, Horace, and others. It would take me a full hour to read them all. But for an example, you have just heard, O people of Rome, that Caesar has sought the laurel, whose cost is death. But now, like Hercules, he returns victorious from Spain, to the gods of his home. The mothers of maidens and of young men whose lives have just been saved, and you boys and girls, who have not known a husband, beware of ill-omened words. This holy day will truly drive away all my black cares. I shall have no fear of war or violent death, while Caesar is the master of the world. The Gestae Divi Augusta, the achievements of the deified Augustus in the Temple of Roma, says this: At age 19, on my own initiative and my own expense, I raised an army by which I restored liberty to the Republic, which had been oppressed by the tyranny of a faction. Those who slew my father I drove into exile, punishing their deed by due process of law, and afterwards they were waged upon by the Republic. I twice defeated them in battle. Twice I triumphed with an ovation. Thrice I celebrated curule triumphs, and was saluted as imperator 21 times. Although the Senate decreed me an additional triumphs, I set them aside, when I had performed the vows which I had undertaken in each war, I deposited upon the Capitol the laurels which adorned my fasces. I brought under the sovereignty of the Roman people. I pushed forward frontier Illyricum as far as the bank of the Danube, an army of the Dacians, which crossed to the south of the river that was, under my auspices, defeated and crushed. Embassies were often sent to me from the kings of India, a thing never seen before in the camp of any general of the Romans. From the peoples of the Parthians and the Medes received the kings for whom they asked through ambassadors. The chief men of those people, the Parthians, Vonones, son of King Phraates, grandson of King Orides, the Medes, Ariobarzanes, the son of King Artavazes, grandson of King Ariobarzanes. In my 6th consulship and 7th consulship, when I had extinguished the flames of civil war, after receiving the universal consent, the absolute control of affairs, I transferred the republic from my own control to the will of the Senate of the Roman people. For this service, on my part, I was given the title of Augustus by decree of the Senate, and the doorposts of my house were covered with laurels by public act, and a civic crown was fixed above my door, and a golden shield was placed in the Curia Julia, whose inscription testified that the Senate and the Roman people gave me this recognition of my valor, my clemency, my justice, and my piety. After that, I took precedence of all rank, but of power I possessed no more than those who were my colleagues in any magistracy. The new works which we built were the Temple of Mars, Jupiter Tonans and Feretrius, Apollo, deified Julius, of Corinus, Minerva, Juno the Queen, Jupiter Libertas, of Lares, D. Penates, of Youth, the Mother of Gods, Lupercal, the State Box at the Circus, the Senate House, the Chalcedicum, the Augustan Forum, the Basilica Julia, the Theater of Marcellus, the Grove of the Caesars beyond the Tiber, to the number of 82, the Theater of Pompey, the Aqueducts, the Flaminian Way. All this I have done as the Divius Filius, the Son of God, Savior of Rome, Princeps of Peace.